Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are because it's really good to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is the Wayside. Yeah. So I just came up with this idea of the Wayside. This is stuff that either last night when I did my taping, I either had to cut for time purposes or I just forgot to get to. And so here we go, burnt the wayside. And the first thing I wanted to mention is that Robert McLean, our boy here, he was the 32nd mayor of Baltimore City, which would make E. Clay Timanis the 33rd mayor. All right, so there's no coincidence there. And that I'm not sure. I don't think I mentioned this in there. McLean's election was so contested, so debated that right away, November 24th of 1903, so he's in office less than 6 months, about 6 months, they put a referendum in to shorten the election span, right? And for biennial elections, right? And it says that this plan has been put forward by Democrats and finds favor. It says this plan has been favored by Democrats and finds favor in the eyes of many organization men who do not think Mayor McLean has done the right thing in the matter of his appointments toward either the party or the organization. So even the Democrats who just elected this guy want him out of there. That's how contested it is, right? And so there were things about this, the actual suicide itself. Now let's get a little bit deeper look. Like I said, I wanted to see. I don't want to be too long in any given episode, and I always want to have room to grow. This is his obit, and it goes into some very interesting things. And this is the first one I want to get to. So okay, so this is his obit, right? And I'm gonna hit his obit here for some quick stuff. Of course, it's friends seem mystified. He looked well and happy. Sunday he was seen with Mrs. McLean by a number of their friends, and yesterday morning, although he did not go to the city hall, the day being a holiday, he took a long walk, returning to the house just before luncheon. According to the statement made by Mrs. McLean to the coroner, later in the afternoon her husband was as well and as apparently as happy then as she had ever seen him, and at no time has their marriage uh, had he exhibited signs of being disturbed or of having any but the common cares of which she had knowledge, right? So she thinks her husband's a happy guy, and we're going to talk about this marriage is a thing of controversy for back in the day. Mrs. McLean, was a widowed socialite who was married to, and there's going to be no coincidence, this Dr. Van Bibber. She was married into the Van Bibber family, and they either I think her husband dies and she becomes a widow, if I remember correctly, and Robert McLean and her start a long affair that is well known in these social circles because, of course, we're all talking about the upper crust. I mean, these aren't working class. If working class politicians, talk about an oxymoron, I guess, right? But so intrigue that he's a doctor that's at the scene. So yeah, it's interesting that Dr. Van Bibber's name is here, and I haven't done much deep digging into them yet. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to the Maryland Historical Society, so I can with letters and things like this, because there just doesn't seem to be what I'm looking for on Google. So I have to go. I have to go check it out. But I love what this says here. It says there are two coroners there. And it was about 5:30 when Coroner Hayden arrived, and he found that he had been preceded by Coroner Linthicum. And of course, Linthicum is a town just outside of Baltimore City in Baltimore County, of the Northern District, who had come without being notified, and it was stated after making an examination carried off the pistol, as he as the residence did not anywhere as the residence is not anywhere near the Northern District. Coroner Hayden confessed he did not know why Coroner Linthicum should have been present at all, and yet he walks away with the weapon. But Coroner Hayden's judgment, after talking to Dr. Van Bibber, was clearly a suicide. In view of the facts, he said, no other verdict can possibly be given but one of suicide. All right, and so we get some reaction pieces in here, but it's very curious. And there was one article And I love this giant cartoon on the top of this. This was in June 20th in 1915, right? And it's a reporter's 19 years in City Hall. This is Alexander Walter here. So this article delves into um, some of the inner dealings, the council appointments and things like that, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention too is that Timanus becomes mayor because he's president of the second city council, and he won that in the same election year. So yeah, so just more aftermath from this. The Republicans gain control of City Hall, and um, so that's a little bit deeper on the political end, and a little bit deeper on his suicide, and that the lack of coincidence that McLean was the 32nd mayor, and now E. Clay Timanus is the 33rd mayor. And so there's just two quick stories. Oh shoot. Okay, so there were um, some other stories about the fire I wanted to touch on that I didn't get as good a chance to touch on. And one was this story of Thomas O'Neill, who owned a department store downtown during the fire. Right? And it says, and he left, Thomas O'Neill left the blackened scorch marks on the side of his building visible until it was demolished mid century for an urban renewal project. No one can really say what saved O'Neill's department store from the fire. Some say that as he implored the Carmelite sisters to pray for him, the wind shifted and the flames took another path. Others credited resourceful store employees. One fanciful tale, the one I heard as a child, has the big red-haired Irishman kneeling on the roof of his store before the terrible inferno, imploring the Blessed Mother to preserve O'Neill's. And so when I first came upon that, I was like, oh, who are the Carmelite sisters? Do they have the power to petition the Lord with prayer? And so here's the Carmelites, a monastery of Baltimore, and discover the fire of God's love. Unbelievable, right? No coincidence there. And this is a Jesuit, like a Catholic Jesuit organization of nuns, and so they're going to be coming into Baltimore. I'm sure of that. They just announced themselves. um, and also, there was one other story that got jettisoned that I wanted to bring up, and it's this woman's story here, Mrs. Fouracre. And she tells a great story about she was in like Upper Fells, and she was trying to get home. She was staying with her aunt or grandmother or something, and she was trying to get home on the trolley. But the trolley could only get so far, and they didn't really understand what the fire was happening because it started at 10:30 in the morning, and so this is early mid Sunday afternoon, and they get as far as just outside Hopkins Station there, and they can go no further. But she's a young girl; she's 10 years old, traveling on her own, and so a fireman agrees to walk her home to Locust Point. And from where they were to the tip of Locust Point, it's 4 or 5 miles easy, walking. And they had to walk around the fire, adding, I'm sure, quite a bit to that walk because the fire did take up a huge chunk of the city. But this story gets amazing after the fire. That horrible winter passed. Warmer weather came. Throughout the change of the season, the familiar omnibuses bringing immigrants from Locust Point rumbled up down Fort Avenue, and they were passed by an ever-increasing number of strange vehicles, horse-drawn, big-wheeled carts brimming with junk. Out Fort Avenue they went, and when they came back, they were always empty. Somebody said they were going to Devil's Bucket. Devil's Bucket, a large pond of slimy green water almost midway between my house and Fort McHenry. Bottomless, they said it was, as far back as I can remember. I was told that a person drowned there, and that his body was never found. We children were warned about it. Don't dare go near Devil's Bucket, our elders told us. It's the mouth of Hades itself. But of course we youngsters knew better. After all, we ice skated on it every winter. And that spring of 1904, we literally flocked to it. We followed the carts right to its edge, and we discovered that they were dumping the debris of the fire into its dark waters. The horses would push the carts almost into the bucket, and the drivers would hammer out a pin, allowing the cart to lift and dump its contents. Such junk as slid off, twisted metal, bricks, hunks of plaster, bits of china, glass, everything imaginable, even a delicate little china figurine of a girl kneeling, her hands held forward. I still have that little doll. Her back is black and crusty, and her apron and her face keep the original pale pastels, and she still has 10 fingers. The debris helped solve the mystery of Devil's Bucket. Some months after the dumping began, someone noticed strange things floating on the river, bits of the debris they discovered. Apparently, an underground stream flowed beneath the bucket, keeping it something like quicksand, but also draining it out into the river. Years later, it was filled. And so this is February 7th, 1965, celebrating 61 years of the fire, I guess. Um, so amazing story about a bottomless pit on Locust Point. So now let's. Okay, so I wonder how long that took me to set up. 11:44 now. I'll try to remember to look and see. But so I set up some maps of Locust Point because I was like, where would this? Where's the bottomless pit? And so here we have Federal Hill, right? And then we got Riverside Park coming up here. All right. And then as you travel down, this is Fort Avenue, which is this is 4 Acre. It's talking about following the very strange vehicles filled with weird debris down to a bottomless pit, chucking it in, right? And then we have Latrobe Park here, and this is behind a school, I think, over here. And then we have Fort McHenry, and of course we have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers around in here somewhere, kicking around, as I found out from the very beginning. There they are, right there. So maybe no coincidence, bottomless pit, that had a little side stream that vented into the river, and they found some debris floating in the river, I guess, on one of these sides. But it couldn't have been that much, or there would have been a big problem, just based on her eyewitness story of them going through. And so this is what it looks like today, but this is what they show us Locust Point looking like with maps, right? And so this is 1792. And I don't see anything that looks like a lake. Maybe down in here. Yeah, they don't certainly have anything that looks like a lake or would be a bottomless pit of quicksand on here in 1792. And they got Fort Avenue there, of course, because Fort McHenry's been there since the beginning. That's 1792. Then I got the 1822 city plan. It's pretty well gridded off. They don't even show any from the way they planned out Locust Point. They weren't going to have any greenery on Locust Point at all in 1822. All right, look in the 1850s. This is the 1850 plan. Not the greatest shot I got because I had to just download these real quick. Again, just completely gridded. No sign of a lake or anything like that on there yet. This is 1880, I think. Yeah, I'm really sorry about these images, guys. I just wanted to put this together real quick and without fishing through all the hundreds of photos I have of maps. So I just downloaded the first images that would came up. This is the 1880s. It's interesting, the shape always kind of changes a little bit, but still no indication that there's a lake there or anything big enough that, as Miss 4 Acre says, this I think is the last one. This is 1990. It was big enough for them to ice skate on. The kids ice skated on it, and it was big enough for them to bring a train to and dump massive loads of debris into in 1904. So, all right, so that closes it out with the story of the suiciding of Robert McLean, at least until I get deeper in with the the archives. But moving the story forward, we're going to get into the celebration commission, of course, because they have a rebuilding celebration association is what they call themselves, and that's the Jubilee Committee, and we're going to get into them coming up, and it's going to get crazy. And I know, yeah, I changed the name of the show to Baltimore, but I haven't really had much Baal. Is there ever going to be any Baal in Baltimore? And yes, there will be. He's coming. But anyway, so until the next one, cheers, guys.